All right, welcome out. As I said previously, this textbook will give you probably most, if not all, of what you need in order to think well as a critical thinker. I've been teaching at the college level 25 years. Um, this is probably the best critical thinking book I've ever used. Some critical thinking books can get too technical, and especially I usually teach this at the sophomore level, can get too technical for younger students. So um, this not that this isn't technical, but the thing that's different about this text is that it's focused or geared more towards the student. Okay, um, thus much more connectable. It connects more to everyday usage, critical thinking texts I've used in the past. They're great for learning critical thinking. You learn the terminology, you learn the strategy, you learn the perspective, point of view, and all that good stuff. But it doesn't really, without my continual notifications or noting, really connect with reality that well, or uh, everyday usage, I guess we could say is probably the best term. So, anyways, the first chapter was going over weak sense thinking, and then it was going over the nine character traits of a good, uh, I'm sorry, fair-minded thinking. Fair-minded thinking. You don't want weak sense thinking. You want strong sense thinking. The first chapter was fair-minded thinking, and become a fair-minded thinker. There it is, right there. And we went over that, and also the nine character elements of a good uh, fair-minded thinker. Okay, um, and again, critical thinking, which many don't think too much about. They think more of the on the technical end or the technical aspect or elements of critical thinking. But there's also the human or emotional end of it or part of it. And that's where those nine elements of character, uh, nine character types, I mean, I shouldn't say character types, nine element of character, of one's character come into play, where you're thinking about or making sure that your point of view is open, that you're thinking about others, not just your own point of view, that you're compassionate, you're patient, you have empathy, on all these human traits. I really I haven't taught from too too many textbooks. This might be the only one, as a matter of fact, that teaches human traits in such a manner. Anyways, let's move on. So this is the first four stages of development. At what level? This is testing yourself. This is another good aspect of this text. Books are learning that really brings you into the picture. And this definitely does because it's really geared towards the student. Where are you, Mr. or Mrs. Student, uh, in your level of thinking? How do you think? What are your prejudices and biases? Again, that's not something that I've seen brought up in too many critical thinking textbooks, but they're essential because your perception of things are really clouded oftentimes by who you are, what you've learned, your background, wherever you were brought up, culture, religion, political background, age. How old are you when you're learning these techniques or this philosophy? I guess we could say, and then, and so much more. So you really have to think about the filter through which you're perceiving, seeing things, and thinking about things. Right? Anyways, most of us are not what we could be. That's also very true. We are less. We have a great capacity, but most of it is dormant and underdeveloped. Improvement in thinking is like improvement in basketball, ballet, playing a saxophone. It's unlikely to take place in the absence of a conscious commitment to development. As long as you take your thinking for granted, you won't do the work required for improvement. Again, this is relatively unique in critical thinking textbooks that I've used. Um, considering, your who you are, your character, elements of character that you want to incorporate into your thinking, into your being, because this is a systemic tool or application. You're not just going to be using this in academia. You're going to be using this in your private life, in your home life, in your community, in your clubs, in your church, in your uh, place of work. It's a systemic application, right? Development and thinking is a gradual process requiring plateaus of learning and just plain hard work. It is not possible to become an excellent thinker simply by taking a beginning course in thinking. Very true. I've talked about this before. Changing one's habits of thought is a process that occurs over years, not weeks or months, right? As I tell my students, you can't learn this in a 4-month course. You can't learn it in two 4-month courses, or maybe 3 or 4 month courses, 3 or 4 4-month courses. This is probably something you have to do. There's something called the 10,000 hour rule, which has been bandied about for some time by various experts, saying that you really can't even infringe upon the realm of expertise until you've been practicing something or been exposed to something for at least 10,000 hours, which when you think about it, that's crazy, right? But it's probably true. It took me about 4 or 5 years of continual teaching to really teach well and to understand how to teach well and to really learn it. Okay. Most people will live their entire lives as unreflective thinkers too. To develop as thinkers requires commitment to daily practice. All right. So I'm going to go through these stages. I probably won't finish them in one video. It might be too much for one video, so I'll probably cut these. Half will go to the beginning thinker and then finish up with the last three. Okay. Unreflective thinker. And this is most people. This is most of my students. This is even my students or students who have graduated after college. I really don't know what's being learned in college. As we found out, the research has shown in the first couple of years, there's very little learning going on. That's because most of the courses are elective courses. They're not courses that are a part of one's major, so they just work towards the grade. They don't work towards learning. And that's not all bad because I guess it depends on what the courses are, right? Some courses are very useful and applicable, and other courses are just, fill in the gaps, fill in the requirement sheet, right? Build my way towards that degree. But most people are very unreflective. They're very unaware of their own internal biases and prejudices and a whole heck of a lot that's going on internally that needs to be addressed. Okay. Are you an unreflective thinker? We are all born and most of us die as there you go. Most of us die as largely unreflective thinkers, fundamentally unaware of the role thinking plays in our life. At this and that's why I say that most students are probably graduating, even college, never mind high school, but even college, um, lacking probably 60 to 70% of what they need, not just for the workplace, but in every area of life in order to maximize one's ability to think well and to live well and you know uh, fully develop and function at as optimum as possible capacity, and living as fulfilled a life as possible. And that doesn't necessarily have to do with being rich and famous, coming up with your own brand or coming up with something unique and that hits the spot for the general population, and you are exposed to millions and you sell books or I don't know, you're a major influencer or uh, I don't know, you actor, a politician, business person, engaging with tens, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people. That's not necessarily what I'm talking about. Um, you can live a relatively anonymous life and live it better by using good critical thinking. So from the bottom to the top, this is applicable again, systemic in its application. At this unreflective thinker stage, we have no useful conception of what thinking entails. For example, as unreflective thinkers, we don't notice that we continually make assumptions, true, form concepts, draw inferences and reasons within points of view. At this stage, we don't know how to analyze and assess our thinking. We don't know how to determine whether our purposes are clearly formulated, our assumptions justified, our conclusions logically drawn. We are unaware of intellectual traits and so are not striving to more fully embody them. And sometimes some people don't want to know, right? They want to push an agenda. They want to remain comfortable. They want to stay ignorant. Because once you learn how much you don't know, right? And how much you assume and how much you're lacking and how much people think differently from you, right? Um, that becomes very humbling, and being humble is a critical aspect of critical thinking. That becomes very humbling and also maybe depressing, right? Wow, I thought I was all that in a bag of chips or a box of potatoes or whatever. All right, but you're not. We are unaware of intellectual traits, and so we are not striving to more fully embody them. At this stage, many problems in our lives are caused by poor thinking, right? But most are unaware. What are we doing? Once again, we're pointing or always looking somewhere else for excuses or reasons outside of ourselves or outside of logic or outside of, um, the right answer. We just want to point fingers. We want to blame and we want to excuse ourselves as quick as possible, right? We don't question our beliefs or our decisions. We lack intellectual standards and have no idea what these standards might be. We lack intellectual virtues. We're not aware that we lack them. We unconsciously deceive ourselves in many ways. We create and maintain pleasant illusions. Oh, that's great. Pleasant illusions. Um, and that's not, you know, we're not talking about being a magician here, pleasant illusion. But illusions is something that we believe, or a lot of times people don't even think about it, to be honest. Um, but it really has to do with believing something, and it's not founded in reality. There's no facts. They just want it to be true. Maybe they have a political axe to grind, or maybe they have a socioeconomic axe to grind, or maybe it's a particular group or club or culture or race or whatever that they have an axe to grind against for some reason. And sometimes people don't even know why they're angry or upset or angered by whatever it is that they're fighting against. It's just we're just very it's great. It's very good. It's essential to be sane, to be logical, to be realistic, to not live in a fantasy land. I was watching this show the other day. It's called Whatever, and there was a woman on there, and she was asked, "How much do you want a man to make? Someone that you would consider seriously or date or marry." And she said, $10 million. He has to make. And I looked at her, and I'm thinking, what does she have to offer? As far as her looks were concerned, nothing amazing. She wasn't like a supermodel looking person, attractive, but nothing extraordinary for that price tag. Intellectually and so forth, I really didn't see the reason for her wanting 10 million other than being delusional, right? If you know how things work, and then she lowered it down to a million. A million. I'll take someone who makes $1 million, which these days, to be honest, is not going to make you really rich. I mean, you're living well and comfortably, but that doesn't make you one of the more wealthy. It used the Forbes 400. They used to have the richest people on there, lowest net worth was like 400, 500 million. Now it's about a billion, right, with inflation. But anyways, if you know things, if you're realistic, you know that the median income in the United States, and these women that were on the show are living in the United States, the median income, not average, because average can be blown out by high numbers and low numbers, right? You can have a whole bunch of people, maybe you can have 10,000 people earning 60,000, and then you have 10 people that are earning 10 million, right? That average will really shoot up. So you want the median, which is a more realistic number, the most frequently occurring middle number, median of the road or the highway. And the median income is about 62,000, 62,000, right? Which with inflation these days is not much at all. Anyway, that's another topic for another video. We unconsciously deceive ourselves in many ways. We create and maintain pleasant illusions because of our beliefs. Because our beliefs seem reasonable to us. Yeah, they seem reasonable. We believe them with confidence, even though we don't even reflect upon them. Think about them in the least, in a realistic way. Start asking questions. Well, $10 million, how many am I actually worth $10 million, right? Or worthy of, I should say, finding someone. And, why should I put a price tag on my relationships first and foremost? That's probably where people go wrong in the first place. Right? And so many questions, so many qualifying, quantifying, specifying questions that aren't even thought about. I do this with my students frequently. I don't want to say all the time, but frequently, probably 30, 40, 50% of the time, sometimes on the high end, where students write argument papers, and I said, you're missing. You're missing about 50, 60, 70% of the picture. And they're going with insight or understanding from a very limited perspective, or from overtly singular biased sources, or maybe they looked at a couple of sources. But the thinking is so shallow, so superficial, so wrong, so off base, it's not even funny. And you think that so many people graduate from even college with that level of poor thinking. It's a tragedy. It's a travesty. And that's why I'm doing this. I'm trying to get more people off the snide and on the up and up. We walk about the world with confidence that things really are the way they appear to us. We judge some people to be good, some bad. We approve of some action, disapprove of others. We make decisions, react to people, go our way in life, and do not seriously question our thinking or its implications. There have been judgments made recently in the media about certain people and certain groups and certain events that are just tremendously off base, way off base, so ridiculously wrong. It's laughable in a sad way, not laugh good time, but a sad way. And most people are just fully ignorant of that fact. And even if you try to tell them that they're wrong, they're not going to listen. And this is another thing that we do. We could care less about whether or not we're wrong. And even if say there's 100 experts out there, or 100 times, research has been performed in examining something, right? And you've got 100 case studies or something like that, and done by 100 experts. And 99 experts say one thing, and then another one says something else. And because you want to believe that thing that one expert believes, or that one case study shows to be relatively correct, right? You go with that and just ignore the 99%. Most people will do that. They'll ignore the 99, the 95, the 90%, the majority of what's out there, the truth, facts, right? And then I hear both sides, like in the political realm. You hear the left saying about the right and vice versa. You don't know the facts. You're ignorant. You're brainwashed. You believe the propaganda. And they're both saying that about each other. And I'll tell you, they're probably both true. They're both accurate because most people are unaware of what's going on. Right? Although we don't realize it, our egocentric tendencies at this stage play a dominant role in our thinking. True. We lack the skills, motivation to notice how self-centered and prejudiced we are. How often we stereotype others, how frequently we dismiss good ideas simply because we don't want to change our behavior or our comfortable way of looking at things, right? And people will talk about one big issue now is systemic racism, and that is a self-centered, prejudiced, stereotypical bias, right? Most people have that. It may not entail race, but most people are self-centered with certain prejudices firmly locked in place, backed by stereotypes, right? And they may not mention it because it's not politically correct to do so these days, but that's what they're thinking. And I'm not necessarily talking about race. It could be something in regards to culture. It could be something in regards to socioeconomic status, maybe academic status, maybe groups, particular groups, political groups, business groups, whatever, right? Oh, people in that religion or that business, or, that political party, they're blah, 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 right? And you're just blindly, mindlessly, uh, prejudiced and stereotypical, and not thinking beyond anything other than the prejudices and biases, preconceived prejudices and biases of others, of a particular group, maybe, right? That's crazy. It's crazy. We got to stop the craziness. All right. Often parents and teachers themselves are unreflective thinkers. There you go. This results in and from a vicious cycle. Unreflective persons typically raise unreflective persons. That's right. Even teachers, and you think teachers are supposed to be of a class that is more reflective, more self-examining, more self-aware, more humble, more accepting of differences. But some are not. Some are just as agenda-driven as any biased person. Right? Anyways, to do so requires that you become honestly reflective. There it is, right? Honest reflection leads to healthy motivation to change. To move to the next stage, you must become reasonably articulate about what you have to do to improve. Motivation and the will to change is crucial. Without this drive, which you must cultivate within yourself, don't expect significant growth in your development. And growth takes change and pain and humility and self-examination. And that's difficult to do. Difficult to look in the mirror and go, gee, I'm wrong. Gee, I don't know. Gee, am I ignorant? Gee, have I got a lot of work to do on me? Well, I found myself there about 30 years ago, and it's been a long, arduous task to chip away at all that garbage inside and to grow and to develop, right? It's been painful, it's been difficult. Without a healthy dose of intellectual humility or awareness that you are thinking may well be deficient in any number of ways, or many ways, a number of ways, it will be very difficult to progress beyond the unreflective thinker stage. Oh, so true. The challenge thinker. Now you're moving up. Are you ready to accept the challenge? You cannot solve a problem you do not own or deal with, a condition you deny. Without knowledge of your ignorance, you cannot seek knowledge you lack. Without knowledge of the skills you need to develop, you will not develop them. Right? It's just like anything. You've got to choose to improve. Right? Any great athlete will tell you that. Right? If the best coaches are going to be, and I've had some good coaches in football, baseball, basketball, who are bluntly honest with you, and work you to the core and drive you and drill you to get things right. Anyways, this is the challenge thinker. The challenge thinker, in this stage, you begin to notice that you often make questionable assumptions, use false, incomplete, misleading information. These are things that all my students do. Make inferences that do not follow from the available evidence. True. I will often catch my students saying, here's some evidence this proves, blah, blah, blah. And I go, no, probably doesn't prove anything in an absolute fashion. You got to qualify it. Because of the research done and the experts involved in the data and findings that have been done over an extensive period of time, and it's been gone over rigorously through a lengthy period of time. And most of what has been needed to discover fault or falsehood or truth, um, to a great degree, with a preponderance of evidence, this shows that this is more likely true than false. And people don't want to do that. They go, no, that's wrong. That's right. This is right. No doubt about it. LeBron's to go. No questions. No argument. Right. Or Michael Jordan's to go. Or whoever. Right? You see the same type of terrible failed thinking in the sports realm as well. Right? Sports fans. They fail to recognize important implications of your thought, fail to recognize problems facing you, form factual concepts that lead you in the wrong direction, reason with prejudice points of view, think egocentrically. That's huge. It's very difficult because we can. It's too bad with it. We can't get outside of ourselves more. Maybe that's why people do drugs. You know? There's there's one, what is it, peyote buttons, allegedly that the Yaman priest or the Yahweh way. It was Carlos Castaneda and the Yahweh way. I think it's the Yaman priest. It's been a long time since I've read that book. Maybe it's not Yaman, but the priests, the indigenous tribes, uh, followed these philosophies, and they would eat, I think, or maybe smoke peyote buttons, peyote, and they believed that they were astral projecting outside of their body. You know, maybe to other realms, other dimensions, or about the world's atmosphere. I don't know. But they believe that's what they believed was happening. Of course, they were not, and most likelihood, I may be wrong, but I don't think they were astral projecting outside of their body. Uh, you know, like a spirit being projected outward. It was just their mind believing that it was a spirit astral projection or something like that. Anyways, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Maybe you have to do drugs to really get outside of yourself. It's sad. But you need to work to get outside of yourself. It's not easy. I'm a very introspective person, or a very introspective thinker. So that's where I live, right? And I grew up because of that. I grew up very shy, very introverted. I'm a reformed introvert. I'm now a practiced extrovert, but maybe that's how you have to start and then go the other way. Anyways, think egocentrically, seek status, privilege, and self-interested power, blindly follow group ideologies, seek acceptance, validation, perhaps even believe in fake news. That's a Trumpism, right? Superstition, conspiracy theories. And again, you'll hear in the political realm, those on the left go, oh, those conservatives, they're full of conspiracy theories. And then the conservatives, oh, those leftists, they're full of conspiracy theories, and that's groupthink. And people are individuals, they're social by nature, so they want to be with other people. They find strength in groups, right? Well, you'll also find problems. Just ask, any country, nationalism, just look at any group, political bias, economic bias, cultural bias, and so forth, right? Our religion is better. We got the truth. There may be, 600 religions, 600 different religions on the planet. Never mind to talk about the various hundred thousands of sects like the Christian. How many hundreds or thousands of sects are there in the Christian religion? So 600 religions and hundreds, thousands of sects. Who has the truth? Right? Well, each person who believes something, usually one thing, of a particular religion believes they have the truth. Why would you be in a group where you thought that wasn't the truth? That you were exposed to experiencing, right? That would be kind of odd. Well, I don't believe in this religion, but I'll join it. I don't think that's how it works. You move to the challenge thinker stage when you become aware of the many ways your thinking is shaping your life, including recognizing that problems in your thinking causes problems in your life. You begin to realize that poor thinking can be life-threatening. I wish I could get this message through to more people. That it can literally lead to death or permanent injury, that it can hurt others as well as yourself. Time and time again, I see people making very bad decisions, and within a matter of seconds, within moments or minutes, they basically turned their life around, turned it on end, did a 180, destroyed their life. They lose their job, they lose their loved ones, they lose their lives, they lose their freedom. Maybe they go to prison or whatever, just because of terrible thinking, that's not based, and that's not discipline. Basically, this is a disciplined uh, form of thinking. Probably if you were going to build a religion, this would be like the religion of critical thinking, right? But there's no church, and uh, there's no tithing, there's no priests per se. But it's not really a religion. It's a philosophy, and it's a particular thinking perspective, right? That's really really going to be health inducing, I guess we can say, for those who apply it on a regular basis and commit to it. Really, you have to commit to it. You can't just do it for a few weeks, months, or even a few years. There has to be a lifelong commitment. Kind of like your lover, and you fall in love with this enough that you're committed to it for life. Do you, John or Jane, Joe, citizen, take critical thinking to be your lifetime companion? I do. You also are beginning to have some sense of the difficulty involved in improving your thinking. Oh boy, pet peeve of mine. If you are at this stage, you begin to recognize that you have developed bad habits of thought, but you are unclear as to how to get rid of these bad habits and replace them with more reasonable ways of living, which is thinking, right? And there's this basic concept that, and I'm going to paraphrase it, maybe even poorly, but I'll try to do the best I can. That who you are, it begins with thinking. What's in your mind? What are you thinking? What are you focusing on? How are you thinking? And then taking those thoughts and transferring, and they become transferred if you practice them enough, right? They become transferred to actions and deeds and being, and then you apply them on a regular basis into reality, onto the world. And then after a fashion, it becomes you, it becomes your character, right? So everything begins as a thought. Most everything begins as a thought. Sometimes it's just gas or pain in the knee. But I'm talking about conscious awareness, right? Getting stuff done, right? All that stuff begins there, the thought somewhere, right? You know, relationships begin with a thought, careers begin with a thought, new countries begin with a thought, a new product on the market begins in thought, right? So thoughts and the continual nurturing of thought uh, develops things, develops us, develops our thinking, develops whatever we're working on, really, right? Our business, our career, a book, a song. Though even at this stage, you will embody some degree of intellectual humility. You will need a healthy amount of it. There you go. Healthy amount, considerable amount of it, to move beyond the challenge thinker stage to the beginning thinker stage. So even here, just to get to stage 2 of 6, you're gonna have to stock up on that humility, right? And again, humility isn't I'm not worth anything. Please, sir, hit me. I'll take another. Beat me up. Beat me about the ears. I'm not worthy of life. That's stupidity, right? Humility is just being honest, being aware of I don't know, and I don't have all the answers. I'm a human. I have limited capacity. I have fallibilities. I'm not consistent. I'm not always right. I'm probably more wrong than right. I don't do everything the same every day because sometimes I'm tired, sometimes I'm angry, sometimes I'm depressed, right? If I'm feeling better, if I'm happy, if I'm energized, if I'm all the positive stuff, then I'm going to do better. I'm going to think better. I'm going to be better. I'm going to act better, function better. And then I go the other way. If I'm not, then I'm going to do poorly, right? At this point in your development, self-deception is a distinct danger. Again, nothing could be more true. Many people resist accepting the true nature of the challenge. And that's a part of the work. It's not just knowing this stuff intellectually, but it's becoming aware of you, your character, your shortcomings, your biases and prejudices and point of view, poor point of view, maybe, limited point of view, and all that, all those weaknesses. It's really coming to understand those weaknesses and working on them. And in some cases, maybe just accepting them. Yeah. If you do as many as you do, you will revert to the unreflective thinker stage. Your experience of thinking about your thinking will fade, and your usual habits of thought will continue to run your life. There you go. If you reason in this way, you're not alone, you're in the majority, as I said before. This view, if everyone were to think like me, this would be a fine world, is the dominant one, right? And if everybody thought like you or just thought like what you thought you were thinking, then this world would be, and is, messed up. Those who share this view range from the poorly schooled to the highly schooled. There is no evidence to suggest that schooling correlates with self-reflectiveness, as I said before. Indeed, many college graduates are intellectually arrogant, precisely because of their schooling. Unreflective people are found in all socioeconomic classes and include psychologists, sociologists, philosophers, mathematicians, doctors, senators, judges, lawyers, attorneys, people of all professions. Whether in the form of a careless shrug or outright hostility, most people reject the challenge of critical thinking. That is why some soul searching is important at this point in your development. Right? So these concepts, for some reason, and I think it's because they deal with the inner self, right? The emotions or maybe the spirit or that which is not as visible, or as tangible as some of the more some of the disciplines out there. Like if you're going to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, accountant, those are tangible in the world, right? And in the real world, you can see and practically measure results of that training. But with critical thinking, it's more of an inner thing, right? It's reflected in who you are. It might be reflected in your countenance, might be reflected in your disposition, might be reflected in how you interact with people, whether or not you're a fair-minded thinker or a good person or a kind person or a patient person or a giving person, right? And in today's modern world, that's really not so much what we're interested in. We want results. We want to see something. We want money, power, influence, status. We want to get something for our investment, right? Not just these, soft, invisible, fluffy skills. Step 3, beginning thinker. When a person actively decides to take up the challenge to grow and develop as a thinker, he or she enters the stage we call beginning thinker. In this stage of thinking, you begin to take thinking seriously. And it's funny that we are at the beginning after the first 2 stages, right? This stage, and this probably will take a year or 2 at least to get to, right? Again, a steady work. This stage prepares you for the next stages with the ultimate goal of explicit command of thinking. It is a stage of dawning realizations and developing willpower. There it is, discipline. As I said, it's a discipline, critical thing. It is not a stage of self-condemnation, but rather of emerging consciousness. I am an alcoholic, and only I can do something. Yeah, there you go. People in, I was going to say AAA and in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, those people are really working on good critical thinking skills, right? A lot of stuff that we talked about You don't want to be delusional, self-deceiving, arrogant. You want to be humble. You want to be accepting of differences, accepting of your weaknesses. I am weak, undisciplined thinker, and only I can do something about it, right? It sounds like that, the AA, the Alcoholics Anonymous, their credo, right? For example, you may notice how little you consider the needs of others and how much you focus on getting what you personally want. You may notice how little you enter the point of view of others and how much you assume the correctness of our own. One thing I found out in order to overcome my shyness is most people were more concerned about themselves, and their own thinking, and were less concerned about me than I was ever able to imagine, right? And then I practiced that, and I examined it, and I realized that was true, and I saw what was happening. I got out of my mind. I pulled myself out of my own thinking, self-reflection, selfishness, paranoia, whatever it was, and started to realize. And it just, things started to flip 180 degrees. It was an amazing revelation and an amazing element of growth. As thinkers thinking about thinking, I like that one. That's got to be. I got to put that on a hat, on my t-shirt. Put it on t-shirts. Put it on my merch. Thinkers thinking about thinking. You are merely beginning, and this is the good part, but also sad, that you've come this far and you're just barely beginning, right? Internalize the elements of thought that create or make possible reasoning. For example, purposes, questions, concepts, all that stuff. Figure out how to properly assess reasoning using intellectual standards like clarity, accuracy, precision, relevance, logicalness, significance, fairness. And here's another list of action words, kind of like the list of character traits in the first chapter. There's 3 lists that you're going to have to become familiar with, maybe even just memorize. I don't know, whatever you want to do. However far you want to take it, right? Even though you may have only an initial grasp of how to adhere to these standards, become interested in the role of self-deception, analyze the logic of situations, problems, express clear and precise questions, check information for accuracy, relevance, distinguish between raw information and someone's interpretation of it. Is it firsthand knowledge or data, or is it secondhand, right? Recognize assumptions, guiding inferences, identify prejudices, prejudicial and biased beliefs, unjustifiable conclusions, misuse words and misimplications. And I see my students, excuse me, frequently will use words poorly. They'll throw out a vague word or just a word or two, and they don't qualify it enough to make it as specific and as useful and as productive as it needs to be. If you're too vague in your thinking or in your labeling or in your analyzing or your interpreting, then you're not going to be specific enough in your thinking. Therefore, accuracy, thoroughness, and these are some of the things you'll be finding out as you move forward in the program. Accurate, thoroughness, honesty, and all those good things. What are employers looking for? They're looking for good critical thinkers, good, logical, comprehensive, unbiased, non-delusional thinkers, right? So it's a long, cumbersome, difficult, arduous task. It's a long road, but like they say, time's going to pass anyway, right? So are you going to fret about it and not do it, or just begin to work on it and eventually get it, right? How are you going to spend the next 5 years, 4 or 5 years? Ignoring this, not learning it, or learning it to much better productivity? And enjoyment of life and being more fulfilled and living a safer life, to be honest. Right? This is like putting a condom on your life. Can we say that? Can I say that? Thus, as beginning thinkers, you are becoming aware of how to deal with these structures at work in thought. Right? Some of the major influences that have shaped your thinking. I think I've already gone over some of these. Culture, being born at a particular, geographically, chronologically, what place and time, area, culture, political environment, uh, did you grow up in, right? That really shapes and forms who you are. Particular place, parents with a particular beliefs, talked about that, right? And you also form various social relationships and associations. If you were to change any of these influences, your belief system would change as well, right? And one belief system is not necessarily better than another, but there are certain elements of belief system, regardless of the individual collection of belief systems, an individual's collection of belief systems. It's not that one belief system is better than other, but there are particular beliefs in that system that need to be corrected, adjusted. Right? We all carry around in our minds prejudices from our culture, from where we were born, raised. Right? People go, "There's nothing like Texans. There's nothing like Californians. There's nothing like Floridians or New Yorkians." New Yorkians. People from the 80s are different. People who grew up in the 90s are different. The 90s is it. The 80s is it. The 2000s. Now it's the 2010s, right? So that's all really biased, right? Such and such fans are the best fans. I think most fans are just fans. And there's a lot more similarity between fans of any team or profession, right? Group. They're very similar in their prejudices and biases. We all carry on. Okay, and from our friends, so she's finding ways to locate those flawed beliefs and replace them with more reasonable beliefs. Is part of the agenda, is central to critical thinking. Another way to look at the forces, rational and irrational, that have shaped your mind is in terms of modes of influence, right? Then you've got all of these. I'm not going to go through these. You ended up with particular beliefs because you were influenced to do so in the following ways: sociological, philosophical, intellectual, anthropological, right? So historical. So there's a lot of influence going on, right? Your mind is even influenced by your biology and your neurology. How you think because of physiological or biological differences from 20s to 30s to 40s to 50s. That changes too. In your teens and 20s, you're just open. Things are, the world is my oyster. Your eyes haven't been opened yet to really what's going on. You don't have much experience. You're just having fun and looking for fun, And then the 30s come, 40s come, and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm getting older. First of all, life doesn't go on forever. There's a lot to be responsible for out there, right? I got to think about money. I got to think about paying bills. I got to think about a place to live. Got to think about maybe my spouse or kids now, that I'm older, maybe married or in a relationship, right? Then all that goes away and you move into your 50s and 60s, and all of a sudden, oh, geez, now I'm almost at the end of life. My health isn't what it used to be. My energy isn't as high. My interests aren't in the same place, right? So there's a lot of change that goes on even throughout your life because of just one thing, your body, your aging, right? Age. Never mind all the other influences, right? Reflections such as these should awaken in you a sense of how little you really know about your own mind. Within your mind is a largely unexplored world, an inner world that has been taking shape for the whole of your life. Uh, Unconsciously, maybe subconsciously, more likely. Unconsciously is you're just not aware at all. It's subconscious. It's there. You're aware of it, but you probably haven't put words to it or labels to it or have taken time to describe it. You feel it. You don't think about it in conscious, concrete terms by putting words or definitions or terminology or a thought to what it is that's going on inside your head, your experiences, right? I think we're almost done. Oh, then we have these traps. The temptation of dogmatic absolutism, temptation of subjective relativism, intellectual arrogance, right? I think let's, I think we'll stop there. I'm going to go. I know that's the end of stage three, but there's a lot to cover here, and I want to take a good 10, 15 minutes for that, which we really don't have time for. And then we have, how far are we going? Let's see, where are we at? 35. Um, so we got about 8 pages left. I'll do that on the next video from here to the end of the chapter. All right, so that's it. I gotta go. I gotta go pick up my son at work and do some other things. So that's it. Take care. Have a good one.